Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session today. We are continuing our Reading Philosophy with Meenakshi series, and today's session is upon ideas. And this is again an article from Aeon and talking about ideas that work. Now, this was a special request from a student who asked me to explain it for him. So, truth, knowledge, justice, to understand how our loftiest means highest, abstractions means these abstract ideas earn their keep, trace them. Earn their keep means how they find their place, trace them to their practical origin. So, this is the crux, this is the argument that is said. And now let us look at it. Ideas, Mr. Carlyle, ideas, nothing but ideas. Scoffed a hard-headed businessman over dinner with Thomas Carlyle, the Victorian essayist and the historian of the French Revolution. Now, this guy, Carlyle, was a very, very famous writer, and he was an historian also. And this businessman who was talking with him over dinner, he scoffed, he means he made fun of Mr. Carlyle, that you are only talking about ideas, but we need more than ideas. And the businessman had had enough of Carlyle's endless droning on here, meaning, focusing on about ideas. What do ideas matter anyway? And he said, ideas don't matter. Carlyle shot back. There was once a man called Rousseau who wrote a book containing nothing but ideas. And he talks about Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who wrote about the social contract theory and the second edition. And now Carlyle talks about that Rousseau's second edition of the book was bound in the skins of those, means the binding of the book was done in the skins of those who laughed at first. Ideas have consequences. So now he's saying that Rousseau actually got revenge, by his book being so famous that all these people who had laughed on his first book, they were as if their skins had been taken and the book had been bound with it. So ideas have consequences means they have got some results, some conclusion, some effect. Of course, Carlyle picked up an easy case. He was referring to Jean-Jacques Rousseau on the social contract, a book brimming means full of incendiary political ideas. Now, incendiary means very hot and very flaming political ideas that went up to fire the leaders of the French Revolution. Now, Rousseau's book actually was like a starting point of the French Revolution. And Rousseau, is a very very famous political philosopher. You might have heard of this quotation of Rousseau: "Man is born free, but he's in chains everywhere." So this was actually a quotation of Rousseau, and the concept of his social contract theory is taken in the constitutions as the Bill of Rights, and there's so many things that have been derived. Okay, so coming back here, but the case for the practical importance of ideas is much harder to make, for ideas are more redolent of the idle magniloquence rather than of revolutionary action. So here they are saying that, okay, Rousseau's case was an easy one, but it's very very difficult to actually support how ideas, they are more of magniloquence, means they are more of talking and showing the bigger picture, but to put it in actual practice of revolutionary action is what is difficult. What of grand abstraction with which our minds are stopped? Now, what of means, what do you say of grand ideas? Abstractions means these strange ideas that our minds are stopped. Stock means our minds are full of these ideas, such as knowledge, truth, or justice. These are so entrenched that we can find it difficult to imagine doing without them. And these ideas are so deeply rooted that we cannot think anything about them. Yet it's even more difficult to pin down what useful practical difference they make to our lives. But these great ideas, do they really practically make a difference to our lives, is what the author is asking. What exactly is the point of these ideas? And now the reply comes. Unlike ideas of air, food, and water that allow us to think about everyday resources we need to survive, the venerable means the respected notions of knowledge. Notions means ideas of knowledge, truth, or justice don't obviously cater to practical needs. So here he had said how practically ideas serve their purpose. And now he is replying that yes, these fancy ideas don't serve very practical needs or the daily needs of food, water, and shelter. But on the contrary, these exalted ideas, these exalted means these high ideas, draw our gaze away, draw our you know, the gaze means our focus away from the practical pursuits. So from the practical things, we move away to higher ideas when we think about them. They are imbued with grandeur precisely because of the superb indifference to mundane human concerns. So these ideas are full of these grand points, just because they are not talking about the day to day, that is the mundane, the day to day things that we are concerned with. Having knowledge is practically useful, but why would we need the concept of knowledge? This is why do we need to think about what is knowledge? And knowledge is good, but why do you need to, dissect knowledge and understand it? The dog who knows where his food is seems fine without the concept of knowledge, as long as he's not called upon to give a commencement address. So here, he's joking that dog, as long as he can find his food, he doesn't really need to know where the knowledge of the food comes from. As long as he knows where the food is, that's fine. Unless he needs to give a commencement address, means a starting speech of some university or some college or something like that. And yet these concepts of knowledge, truth or justice appear to have been important enough to emerge across different cultures and endure over the ages. But in spite of these ideas, which are not practical, like the truth and justice and all this, have emerged across ages, means they have lived across ages, and they have endured, means they have survived. Why then did we ever come to think in these terms? So why do we think about these terms if they are not useful? Friedrich Nietzsche grumbled. Now, Friedrich Nietzsche was again, German philosopher, and he grumbled, means he was irritated, when it came to identifying the origins of lofty ideas, high ideas. Lofty means high ideas. Philosophers had a tendency to be led astray by their own respect for them. So what happens is philosophers tend to, go away from the picture. They just go astray, means get diverted. In dealing with what they felt were the highest concepts, the last whiffs of smokes from the evaporating end of reality. So here, in dealing, when they thought they are dealing with the highest concepts of philosophy and knowledge, which talked about as the last wisps of smoke. Wisps of smoke with the last, remaining effects of the smoke from the evaporating end of reality, means the reality had totally evaporated, and they were only about, these abstract ideas. They had reverently placed them at the beginning as the beginning. So reverently means very respectfully put the theory of ideas at the beginning, convinced that the higher could never have grown out of the lower. So he's saying that that the great ideas can't grow out of the practical and the lower ideas. They need higher ideas to grow from. And Plato's eternal forms, the mind of God, and Plato's eternal forms. Plato also talks about forms as ideas, and he says the ideas are there, and then the external forms comes. The mind of God. That's what Plato talks about as his great ideas. Immanuel Kant's nominal world, they all served. So Immanuel Kant was also a person who was totally talking about abstract ideas. They all served as cradles. Cradles means the birth point, the, growth point. Cradle, like when you put a child in a cradle. So this was like the rocking point of all the higher ideas, offering them a distinguished pedigree. Pedigree means a lineage, a genre, and distinguished because Plato is talking about, Kant is talking about it. So these great ideas were born like this, and the great ideas of abstraction, that ideas are everything, that is where it all started. And therefore the lineage, the kind of, heritage that it carries, these ideas are very, very grand because of Plato and all the other people who were the, starting point of philosophy. But to insist that higher concepts were bound to have higher origin, Nietzsche thought, was to let one's respect for those ideas get in the way of truthful understanding of them. But Nietzsche was like, higher ideas don't need a higher origin. So we should understand them truthfully. If after the death of God and the advent of Darwinism, now death of God here basically meaning when science, came up. Earlier, everything was supposed to be created by God, but when science and Darwinism, Charles Darwin talked about the origin of species, and he talks about how science has contributed, how evolution has happened. So the idea of God creating and evolution happening through God has lessened because of the scientific interventions. We were successfully to translate humanity back into nature. So we were successful in translating humanity back into nature, as Nietzsche's felicitous rallying cry had it. And Nietzsche was also trying to rallying cry means he was supporting that ideas need not have very high origins, and we needed to trace seemingly transcendent ideas. Now, similarly, just as we traced nature to science, similarly we had to trace ideas to transcendent ideas, such as transcendent means something which is there for some time and vanishing, as knowledge, truth, or justice to their roots in human concerns. So in human day-to-day practicality, we needed to find these higher ideas according to Nietzsche. Their origins were not Empyrean. Empyrean means not to be thought about in a higher sphere, but distinctly sublunary. Sublunary means it had to be related to the practical realities, the practical life. Nietzsche encouraged us to ask, what necessities might have been the mothers of those inventions. So why did we start? Nietzsche encouraged us to ask that why did we think about these ideas? Why was it necessary to invent these ideas in the first place? And what, if anything, do they still do for us? So do these ideas still work for us, which were thought so many years ago or such a long time ago? So, this was the concept of idea as a concept itself. And is idea important, or is there something beyond ideas, or ideas are something which are everything actually? So in short, that was the summarization. I hope you enjoyed this, and please do share, comment. Please do ask your friends also to subscribe to the channel. And so that's all for today. So thank you very much, and I'll end the session now. Bye bye. Take care.